Welcome to the Power 365 show. Have you been wondering what's the deal with Industry Accelerators from Microsoft? What are they? And what's Microsoft's angle? Well, this episode's for you. We ventured deep into the world of accelerators with Smith Codio, Principal Program Manager at Microsoft. Find out the who and why and what we should be looking for in the next 12 months with these accelerators. Full show notes can be found at nz365guide.com/91. Now let's get on with the show. Smith, I'd like to welcome you to the Power 365 show.
Hi, Mark. Thank you for welcoming me. I'm excited to be here with you today.
Smith, tell me about where you live, work, and play. Where's that for you most of the time?
I live in the Seattle, Washington area. As you know, I'm part of the Dynamics 365 engineering team, and most of us are located in that area.
And so, have you always lived in Seattle?
No, actually, I went to school in Philadelphia, and Microsoft relocated me to the Pacific Northwest area about 12 years ago, and I've been living here and loving it since.
Man, it's a long time.
It is. I'm dating myself too.
So you have I don't know whether you did this on purpose, but you have your first name as my last name.
Wow, that's even better. So we're like the two peas in the pod.
Yeah, exactly. So when you say you're working in the engineering team, kind of what does that mean for you at the moment?
So this is a great question. So for the listening out there, within the business application group itself, so Jim Phillips, after taking over the organization, thought it was really critical to have a group of engineers within the R&D team itself that will be dedicated in what we call ISV success. So what that means is we need to figure out how to support the ISV pro dev scenario. So there's a group of folks enabling that. Also, we need to figure out what are the inhibitors to the platform and how we can go about solving that for our ISVs out there. So I'm part of the team that is responsible for ISV success in terms of working on the revamping the ISV program. So my team is working on that. Also working on App Store certifications, along with building the industry accelerators that we will be talking about more today.
Yeah, excellent. I can't wait to get into those. What do you do, though, when you're not working? What do you do, like, outside of work for entertainment and enjoying life?
When I'm a geek, my heart. So I spend a lot of time working on my home automation. So for the folks who actually know me very well, they know that I'm really deep into home automation. So I spend a lot of time working on that in my spare time. And then during the weekend, this is really when I take some time aside to connect with friends and family. This is my time. I enjoy being around my friends and family, so I do a lot of that.
Nice. Now, home automation is something I'm pretty passionate about. I'm building a new home shortly, and where do you, how do I choose between Google Home and Alexa? What's the, oops, and there you go, my Alexa starts lighting up. But have you made that choice and then all the follow-on from that point?
Yes, definitely. This is an interesting question. So, I as I mentioned earlier, I'm a geek. So I'm really, I have a strong passion for technology. So, early on, I have a baseline for my core devices, which uses Z-Wave as the protocol for auto automations. And then with regard to what kind of, AI or assistance, personal assistant that should help control. So I settle on Alexa because they started early and the ecosystem is very broad. So there's the most support for most of the devices. So I settle on that. But as a technologist, I actually have devices that can support all of them.
Excellent. And so just give me a kind of a rundown of everything from a house device that, like, is it lights? Is it security cameras? Is it alarms? What do you have automated currently?
You name it, I have it. So I actually I like to do it myself. So I have every switch, every light in my house is a smart device. I have tons of connected devices, and all that is pumping and generating events. And I manage that through a centralized hub, and I do most of the scripting myself. So I have built my own home security systems and all that. So I'm a geek by heart.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Well, I know where to come for advice once I start planning my site. Because my house, what I want to do is make sure I'm not limiting myself to any future scenarios. So that's the thing that concerns me. So I'll come back to you on that. But okay, so that's cool. We understand that you're into home automation and catching up with family and stuff and friends on the weekend. How did you kind of get into Microsoft to start with?
Oh, this is an interesting story. I was part of when I was going to college in Philadelphia. We had an internship program that I was part of, and I joined Microsoft. I spent 6 months internship in Redmond, working on one of the product teams there for 6 months. And right after that, my internship ended. I was I guess, lucky enough to get a job offer, and went back, finished school, and came back and been working in different capacities at Microsoft, different teams, different services internally.
So have those teams always been in the Microsoft business application space, or have you been in other parts of the business as well?
No. This is actually one of the nice things one of the reasons why I actually picked my last role, because I spent the last 10 years working in different aspects internally of the business, from working on the team internally that is responsible for our ERP implementations, that basically manages the entire Microsoft internal ecosystems. I work on different products like SharePoint, Project Server, so many different teams, and spend the last 4 to 5 years working on what we used to call dynamic CRM. So having that wealth of IT knowledge, I think that would be very beneficial to bring that over to help our ISVs to be successful in helping them on not only onboarding, but also be successful on the platform.
Awesome. So let's start drilling into accelerators. So how long is the accelerator program, or how is it? A couple of years? Is it 1 year? How long has it been running?
Good question. So this is actually a fairly new program that we put in place. That the first accelerator actually went live last July at Inspire. So this is a fairly new program, and we're going to continue to evolve that by collecting feedback from the community and from our core ISVs.
So what is an accelerator? Can you give me Microsoft's viewpoint on what problem you're solving with accelerators, and what are they actually from a component level?
Yes, definitely. So, and I guess it might be helpful to kind of set some context on what I know that people who've been in the Microsoft channel ecosystem, they heard or they know that we used to ship what we used to call a set of templates or industry templates. So I want to kind of set the stage, the context on what we had and what we're doing right now, the difference between what we've done and what we're doing right now. So in the past, those industry templates were very specific, and the scope of that was really specific to what we used to call dynamic CRM, right? So they were designed and optimized by our feature PMs, working with some industry expert to kind of collaborate to build those. And those were very tied and tightly coupled to that platform. Fast forward to now, what we're actually doing right now, we're basically following up the pattern that where the Power Platform is going from a vision perspective. We're focusing on building the platform and extending the platform elements where it makes sense. So for instance, the first element of an accelerator centers around a common data model. So as part of the Power Platform, we have the CDM, the common data model layer. And what we've done, we're actually creating CDM extensions. So what that means is a set of schema objects that are optimized to support a set of scenarios for a given industry. So be it healthcare, nonprofit, financial services, and automotive, and et cetera, et cetera.
So when you just say it's an extension, just let me unpack that. Are you in effect just taking the core common data model and then extending it based on a specific industry? In other words, you're creating additional schema on top of core. Is that right?
You are correct. So now, one of the key differentiators that is really critical to call out here. As part of the work that we're doing, we are building the CDM so our partners and customers and developers, the pro devs out there, can use them across the entire stack. What that means, so you're going to have a managed or unmanaged solutions that are going to be put out there in GitHub that you actually can consume that and deploy that on a CDS for app environment. At the same time, we also want to provide you like a JSON file that's going to have basically the objects that represent the entire set of schemas and entities that you actually can use to generate a CDM folder in Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2, for instance. So meaning we are thinking about from a platform, raw platform perspective, what are the elements that a partner might need and where you can start. And we're giving you the right tools that you can use to do that.
So man, you just give me so much, and let me just unpack that slightly. So you said Azure Data Lakes 2 is where the CDM folder sits. So if I had multiple data models, would I have a different CDM folder per model?
This is all supported. You actually can have you can link multiple CDM folders, which in terms basically translate into multiple schemas or models, or you can combine them. So the beauty of that, and that's actually one of the reasons why we want to create the CDM extensions and optimize them for a set of scenarios around a given industry. So we can make it easier for you to basically do mashup. So you can basically bring data sets from different models, but they all have a way you can connect them. And that makes it very powerful in terms of the scenarios that you can enable and gain insights from.
This is great. So one of the things on the show I like to do is really educate the audience. So can you just break down what is included in that JSON file? Basically what's in there?
Yes. So if the model that we're going to put out there, so if we want to go a bit more under the double click on what that really means. So currently you actually can, if you pull up, Power BI, you can actually create a data flow, which is a feature that is in preview right now for Power BI. And what that does, automatically the system or the platform will create a model.json files along with the data storage, the data files that where you're gonna store the data. So what we're doing right now, and in that JSON file, you basically have high level two components to that. The one that is generated from a Power BI data flow has a header to that, which is what we call the mashup. That mashup has a set of instructions that says, that has unique instructions that the Power BI engine will need to be able to create the connections, to be able to set the schedule and all that stuff. That is an area, the header is unique to Power BI. However, the JSON file that we want to put out there in GitHub for our customers and our ISVs to consume, that will basically will not necessarily have the header in it, because we want you to have the flexibility of reusing that wherever you want. You can bring your own subscriptions, for storage, and you can use that as a kind of input to generate those schemas wherever you see fit.
So just drill down for me. Imagine I don't know anything about a schema. What is a schema in this respect?
Good question. So think of it this way. A schema is it's a way to represent a set of entities or tables, so to speak, and define the relationships between them. So if I pick an example of healthcare, right? In the healthcare sector, we created a CDM that supports a set of scenarios around patient, around care plan and stuff like that. So what we've done, we created this set of entities that are needed if you were to build an applications on top of that to create a care plan that needs to take input from when a patient checked in at a hospital or a clinic. So all that is modeled around in that schema.
Yeah. So you're saying if in that scenario there, a patient would be one table in a database as such, so rows and columns, and would have a relationship to the care plan, which would be another table with various rows and columns, correct?
Exactly. That is correct. And then one of the things that we've done as part of the accelerator is we use and leverage what is already part of the platform and the workloads.
Give me some examples.
So an example of that is if we go back to the patient example, when we built the CDM accelerator, so we base that on the HL7 FIRE standard. In that standard, they define patient as a separate dedicated entity called patient. However, as we're building the CDM, the CDM extension that will be sitting in the CDS, the Common Data Service for Application platform, we actually map that to the contact entity that is out of the box on the platform. So we translate that over and bring the relevant attributes and extend what the platform had already. So that's an example of that.
Excellent. Okay. So that HL7, what was it? File.
Fire stuff. It's a fire. It's fire. Yeah, that's this one of the kind of variation of the HL7 standard.
So when you're coming up with a new accelerator, are you trying to identify maybe standard naming conventions, etc., that exist in an industry already, and then map those?
This is a good question. So, as part of the process of building any accelerator, the first stage in that, once we receive the green light from the internal Microsoft Industry team, we actually work and do some internal investigations, working closely with the product teams, working closely with the folks who own the core platform components to do an assessment of what do we have in the Microsoft ecosystem. So, for instance, if you pick manufacturing, this is an area that is primarily owned and driven, the requirements for that, from the F&O, the finance and operation teams. So we basically work with them to understand the roadmap, understand what is currently available on the platform and the workloads. Then we go about creating the extensions around that. And then in addition to that, if we go back to the healthcare space, because there was already a governing body that created an existing standard, which is the HL7, we actually took the guidelines and the guidance from that and applied those to where it's fit to build the CDM for the customer engagement scenarios.
Yeah, excellent. So if I was just to back up even one step further than this point, do you start, like if you're having a whiteboard session and tackling a new industry, do you start with unified modeling language and draw up from there? And then, let's say you've already assessed that there's a standard in it. Is that the kind of point you're starting at, and then starting to build out your common data model from that point?
You are right. So we actually started from the UML, and then we evolved that to full-blown ERDs. That's basically the shell that we start with, that we started reviewing internally with our tier one partners, along with the internal virtual team that we have, which is a group of folks representing the different workloads, first-party applications, along with the platform. So we actually vetted that out using that format.
Excellent. Okay, so you just introduced some new terms there. So UML to ERDs, entity relationship diagrams. What's the difference between UML and ERD?
So the key difference here, so the UML helps us kind of basically organize the objects in a way that we can actually describe them to the relationship between that. In the ERD, this is when we actually start modeling the object themselves. So basically we go into much detail. So we know, okay, so we're going to support the sales scenario. So what does that really mean? And then we broke it down into specifics.
Okay. So the additional data that you would have there, is it purely like data maps between entities? Is it relationship like one to N, many to many, that type of thing?
That is correct. That's okay. What we do. Yeah, in there. Yeah. And one thing to call out here, it's really important as we're getting those requests and we go into events. When we're building those CDMs, every entity, every attribute that we have listed in that model has been vetted thoroughly. meaning there's a group of folks who actually argue back and forth whether or not we should name something foo versus foo 1, foo 2. So we spend a lot of time reviewing, hence why we have a philosophy of basically trying to find the most common denominators across. Start small, then we can expand based on feedback from the community.
Yeah, so that, which brings up something interesting. How do you decide what to leave out? In other words, it's easy to put too much in, right, in a common data model, or over engineer it potentially. How do you decide what really makes the cut to go into just the accelerator at this point? Because we're going to drill into why Microsoft is doing it shortly, but how do you make that decision about what stays in, what stays out?
Good question again. As I mentioned earlier in the previous comments, we got our cues from the internal Microsoft industry team. So within Microsoft, we have actually a team that has a CVP. Currently, Deb Kopp, she's the leader of all the Microsoft industries, and she has specific GMs driving those. So those folks are responsible for basically creating the Microsoft story, the Microsoft vision. And we review that with the Microsoft SLT on a regular basis. So given that context, then whatever we do has to basically support those core pillars that from a Microsoft vision. So that's how we go about making those decisions.
Okay, and so kind of what the senior leadership team's involvement, is that more the senior leadership team from the product level, so like Charles Lamana down, or is it even higher than that? Like would you involve James in that?
It is actually higher than that. So this is a very good context to set. So as I mentioned that we have a dedicated organization responsible for Microsoft Industries all up. So the SLT meeting is basically with Satya and his directs. So that's when we go to talk about the Microsoft story. Basically, what is Microsoft standing for our plan to support our ecosystem, the partners or the customers for a given industry. So it's really all up. And then obviously we bring the leaders across all the different verticals. So for business applications, obviously that will be James and his leadership team working with what we're doing, supporting that.
Yeah, awesome. So now let's decide, or I'll let you tell me, why is Microsoft see the need to create these accelerators, particularly around how it's supporting future ISV potential developments?
Great question again. About a year and a half ago, James Phillips, our CVP for Business Application Group, basically reached out to our team and says, what else can we do in addition to all the investment that he's making to build the best APAS, the best application as a platform as a service for Azure to increase adoption to the platform. And then, a few folks, gather together, working with the CDM team, with the data integration team, and us, we think we need to create this accelerator program. Hence why the program was born, to really, in a nutshell, to accelerate customer and partner adoptions of CDS, right? The Common Data Service. And that means it's a pretty broad mission, right? So if you look at what we're doing on CDS, it's basically creating a platform that can integrate across the entire Microsoft ecosystem and technology stacks. So meaning we're going to focus on including Microsoft scenarios from Azure, core Azure services like cognitive services, Azure ML, Office 365, LinkedIn, and Microsoft Office Teams and all that. So basically we're trying to do work to stitch together all the different services and offerings that we have in the context of a business application.
Right. But one of the things that you and I have discussed before is that let's say we have 3 ISVs and they're all going to create a healthcare solution. One might be dealing with, let's say, blood donation at a hospital. One might be dealing with patients in a cardiac ward. One might be dealing with emergency response. So there are 3 ISVs focused on 3 totally different areas of the healthcare industry. the risk I would assume be that they could all go off and build their own common data models, therefore preventing their kind of interoperability between what the actual healthcare provider needs, which is this data set to all work together. So tell us a bit about that rationale of why you're creating these to enable the consistency across the industry.
Makes sense. This is really a fantastic question because it's really important to clarify that to our audience. And that brings me back to really the core value prop for the accelerators. Why are we doing this, right? So we look at it, we look at it, we have kind of three key audiences that we're targeting. So obviously, Microsoft is a big part of that. So what's in it for Microsoft, right? We look at it from what's in it for our ISVs and SIs, and then ultimately what's in it for our customers. So if you look at from those three pillars, right? So from Microsoft perspective, one of the key things we want to reduce the barrier, for solution providers, to increase appeal to, basically we lower the bar for entry for our ISVs to the platform, right? And obviously we want to increase the partner ecosystem by creating that standardized of solutions that we're going to provide. And then most importantly, we want to create interoperability across of the CDM across industries and workloads. So, and that is tightly aligned with initiatives like the Open Data Initiatives, where basically we're going across Microsoft. We're looking at partnership with Adobe, with SAP to create the Open Data Initiative through the power of the CDM. So what we're doing right now tightly aligned to that. Hence why when we have the green light to build any accelerator, we actually go on a very aggressive motion of recruiting key partners. I talk about how we have tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 partners. So tier 1 are the partners who are actually going to work on a day-to-day to advise on the core CDM capabilities and MVP. And then tier 2, those are the people who's going to be part of the steering group, the steering committee that we're going to put together to review with them and have working sessions with them on a regular basis so they can help drive that. So we are basically bringing insight from our partners. This is not really a Microsoft thing. We want that to be a community-driven, community-led. So we are working closely with our strategic partners and also get feedback from the community. So that way, once we release something, it makes it easier for folks to adopt because most of the feedback came from the community.
Yeah, okay, so let's just throw out a few resources here, which we'll make sure we list in the show notes. If people want to kind of get an understanding of the common data model, where's the best place for them to look online?
Oh, that's a great question. So we have some very interesting blog posts out there on, if you go to community.dynamics.com, you can look up anything about Microsoft Industry Accelerator, that we have a pretty healthy community that we're building around that. And also, if we have a short URL, if you want to reach out to us, to the engineering team directly, which is aka.ms/CDM-engage. So that's a short URL. So you can reach out to us and we'll be more than happy to follow up either to a call or to emails, depends on what the level of engagement that you want.
Yeah, awesome. I'll get you to send me those resources through, and we can link them. So the other one is then the Industry Accelerators. Where are they located?
So good question. So the accelerators themselves, we ship a set of applications in AppSource. So our partners or customers can go to appsource.com and look up any of the accelerators that we have, so be it, Dynamics 365 accelerator for nonprofit, for healthcare, for higher educations. You can download them and install them from that. We provided a guided experience to that. We have a test drive also listed in AppSource, and I strongly encourage folks to use the test drive capability that we have. We give you an instance for 24 hours where you can go basically take a guided experience of the capabilities of the connected scenarios and the things that we built. And then, most importantly, we put the managed solutions, the SDK extensions, all the documentations, and any other artifacts that we ship as part of the accelerator. We put it in GitHub under the MIT Creative Commons license, so it's free to use and consume. So we actually encourage folks to go to GitHub, raise pull requests if you want to make propose new changes. So we welcome that. And also, if you want to create your own fork the master and create your own community around that.
Right. Awesome. So GitHub's a location for all artifacts that are supported there. So yeah, I'll make sure we provide links directly to all those, plus direct links to all the app source solutions. So how many are there in total that you've built so far that are ready to go?
Yeah, so we actually, as I mentioned, we launched the first one last July at Inspire. That was a healthcare accelerator one. We currently have 3 total in market. We have the healthcare accelerator in market. We have the nonprofit accelerator in market. We have the higher education one in market. But those are the V1. We actually just launched the V2 for nonprofit. We're actually working on V2 for healthcare. There's a lot of good announcement that we're going to make there in the coming events, Build and Biz Apps. So stay tuned for that. And then in progress, we currently have the automotive V1 that we're working on, and financial services, which covered a few key areas that in the coming month that will be out in market. So there's a lot of excitement around that too.
Okay, so let's just unpack the version 1 to version 2 in nonprofit, because that's already out, right? It's completed V2. What were the biggest differences or changes that you made between version 1 and version 2?
Good one. So for version 1, for the nonprofit accelerator, for instance, we actually, as I mentioned earlier, we started very small because we wanted to make sure that we have a solid foundation to start with. However, since then, we actually receive lots of feedback. We have a lot more partners onboarding and giving us requirements of, what will make a more compelling offering for Microsoft to be able to compete in that sector, right? So we actually in V2 make some pretty big investment around better and tighter alignment with some existing industry standard. Like, for instance, in nonprofit, if for folks who are in that industry, they're fully aware of the IATI standard. It's a governing body that basically helps track program delivery and activities. So we actually have better alignment. We work with that team closely to basically create better alignment between that standard and the CDM. We actually working with providing higher fidelity, connected and simple applications for the nonprofit scenarios. So we're actually making some pretty substantial investment in that, in terms of setting up the CDM so we can have placeholders for making integration easier when connecting to a set of external data sources. And there will be more we're going to do around building connectors and flow templates to make that even easier.
Yeah, okay, interesting. Because, we've obviously drilled into CDM, and I suppose why I've gone deep on this is because I think that's the secret sauce in everything that you're creating. But obviously there's more components. So I take it that up at the kind of visual layer of the application that you would have various forms, views, dashboards. Do you provide any pre-packaging around flows? And then unique experiences. And what I mean by experiences, I mean, whether they be mobile, like a Canvas app experience as opposed to a model-driven. What are the additional things? Have you created any PCF controls that are kind of unique potentially to the accelerators?
This is great. You literally just were reading my mind. So yes, this is actually what we do as part of the accelerator. As I mentioned earlier, the key component of an accelerator is the first layer is the CDM, the Common Data Model extension that we built. And then the second layer to that is we look at the integration layer. What can we do to make it easier for a given sub-segment or vertical in a given industry to make it easier for folks to bring data over to the platform? And then on top of that, we built those demo applications, and now we are calling them connected applications because we're looking across as connecting different part of the platform in the Microsoft ecosystem. So let me elaborate a little bit on that. In the previous models that we built, those apps were primarily centered around the customer engagement scenarios. Right now, if I pick the next accelerator that we're going to launch, which is the automotive one, for instance, that's going to come out soon, we're going to launch a set of connected scenarios. So, for instance, think of the investment that Microsoft is making around connected car. So we have a team internally working on building a set of services that can make it easier for car or, manufacturers or OEMs to exchange data with dealer groups. So we're going to take advantage of that investment that can connect data coming from sensors in cars. This is the IoT scenarios. We'll be able to listen to that, similar to the connected field service scenarios, where we actually can raise an event based on data currently stored in Azure IoT Hub. So we will be able to do the same thing for automotive and other industries, but for specifically to automotive, we're working with the connected car team. They have the Microsoft MCVP, the Microsoft Connected Vehicle Platform. So we're going to leverage that investment to bring data over and showcase what basically the art of possibility. What can you do leveraging the different aspect of the Microsoft ecosystem, from the Microsoft Connected Vehicle Platform to Azure Map to customer engagements to Power BI to virtual assistants, where you can get help and do all that. So we're bringing all that together as part of the connected scenario. So stay tuned for the launch announcement on the automotive front.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. So in terms of partners building on top of these accelerators, who owns the IP? Does the partner that builds something, is there any kind of payment to Microsoft, or are these 100% open source projects from Microsoft's investment, and then the IP that a partner, let's say, or an ISV builds on top of it, they would own that part of it? How does that work?
Interesting question. So yes, so it's really important because I get that question often from my engagements and events that I've been to working with partners. So the CDM itself, Microsoft is owned by Microsoft. The CDM, the Common Data Model Extension, is owned by Microsoft. And let me explain what that really means.
Okay, so those are the one that you're saying, the Common Data Model as part of your accelerator is owned by Microsoft.
It's owned by Microsoft. However, the entire work, the way we build those, it's in partnership with our key ISVs. So what that means, if you think about what a CDM really represent, a CDM represent the things that are common across. So that means the secret sauce right now, it's really in the application layer side of the house. So we're not asking partners to provide the IP to Microsoft or help, explaining the IP to Microsoft. This is a partner play. What we're asking our partners to do is to help Microsoft basically come together as a group, as a governing body, to create a set of reusable elements and components that can make it better for the ecosystem. So the CDM, the core CDM will be managed and maintained by Microsoft. So we can receive feedback. People can raise pull requests in GitHub, and we'll triage it, vet it, and push it back where it makes sense. Everything else on the application side, which is a big distinction that I want to call out here, this is where the partner will add value. And that is the secret sauce that obviously we expect our partners to continue to thrive and grow the business on top of that.
So that would be, so the partner's owned IP then at that point.
That is correct. And the partner basically, the benefits of that, because we're creating that common language to the CDM extension. So now you have other partners that can take dependency on this core CDM, right? So you can only imagine the possibilities of having, multiple applications being able to easily integrate and exchange data. So as ISV is in the ecosystem, it makes it easier for you to build. So you don't have to keep repeating the same thing over and over. You can just get that reusable aspect of the platform that you can rely on.
Yeah, I like it. So of these accelerators that you've built, what's the support model? How does Microsoft support what you've built from an accelerator point of view?
Okay, I got that question often. And another way, I heard that from partners. Hey, I know that you've done things in the past and, would Microsoft give up on that next month or next year? The answer to that is no. And let me break it down for our listeners. So the way we look at it internally, as I mentioned earlier, the CDM extension, the core CDM extension is owned by Microsoft and is part of the core CDM, the platform. So what that means, Microsoft is responsible and will continue to maintain, support, and evolve that. The SDK extensions, the simple data, that we ship, because Microsoft ship those and put them in GitHub, Microsoft is responsible, because they're part of Marketplace, to make sure that they continue to work and recertify, because that's part of AppSource. We have to recertify our applications every so often. So Microsoft is responsible for ensuring the success and the governance around that. So we'll continue to make sure that the recertification process work and those simple applications, which, by the way, are not designed for production use. They're designed to highlight and showcase the capabilities of the CDM extension, along with what the platform, the art of possibility for the platform.
Okay, so let's just drill into that word there, because the word that my alarm went off on was they are non-production. Okay, what does it take to make them production?
So the accelerator, the simple applications that we built are not full-blown applications. They are simple and demo applications. What that means, it's no different than if I'm an ISV and I go to, GitHub or any open source community and use an open source library into my applications. So it's a similar construct. So if someone likes a component, let's say that the PCF, if we create a PCF, you like it, you like to consume it, it's an open source library that is in GitHub. You feel free to take it and consume it however you see fit. But our intention is never to take that and run the production applications on that, because they're very limited in terms of the capabilities.
Yes. So they're proof of concepts, but there's nothing stopping an ISV taking them, extending them, and turn them into production assets.
That is correct. That is perfectly fine. And at this point, the ISV itself, as I mentioned earlier, is basically reusing an open source library.
Yeah, exactly. Makes sense. Okay, can you give me any best practice or success stories of partners that Microsoft already have documented case studies on that have jumped on these accelerators?
We do have some interesting ones. So I'll try my best to highlight a few key success story here in the short time that we have left. So if I pick the healthcare accelerator, for example, after we launched that last July, within a month, we received like a request from an ISV over the weekend. It was a Sunday, I remember specifically. And I responded to that because the partner was trying to, get more info. And we basically reached out back to the partner, and to get more context. So I learned that this is a small, very small team of 2 or 3, developers and people with great ideas, but expertise in the health industry. They wanted to start a new company, and they wanted to leverage the investment that we made in the accelerator so they can use that as a starting point, as a baseline to launch a whole new product. So go from a small team of 3 or 4 folks. They were able to take the health accelerator, extended that to where now they actually are in the running, presenting RFPs to big organizations such as the NFL, Kaiser Permanente, So think about what that really represents. So a small team with the backed by the Power Platform, leveraging the investment that we made in the accelerator, which gave them basically a higher baseline, which is part of the value prop, reducing barrier to entry, right? So they were able to bring the IP on top of that and create a compelling applications that is worth and to be able to compete in the running of health solutions that the NFL is actually looking for. For me, that's a great success story, and we have several of those that we actually communicating internally on that.
Awesome. Tell me. I just want to confirm something you said before. You don't ship any managed solutions as part of these accelerators. They're all unmanaged. Is that correct?
So we actually, as part of the DevOps process that we have, so we actually produce both the managed and unmanaged solutions, and we put both in GitHub. So we want to give our partners the most flexibility.
Yep, I love it. Is there any first-party app dependencies with the accelerators outside of the common data model? And so I'm talking about the Dynamics products.
The short answer is yes, as of now, but we have a plan where you'll be able to take advantage of just the core CDM without having, if you don't have a hard requirement on the core first-party workload. Let me explain what that really means. So let's say, for example, we built an accelerator that extended a first-party entity. Let's say if I pick this opportunity entity, which is part of the sales workload, right? The sales workload. As you know, those workloads now can be purchased and managed independently on the platform, right? So obviously, if you need to use the capabilities of that applications, you need to get the license required to support that. However, from a CDM perspective, if all you're going to do is to leverage the base object, you will be able eventually to deploy the CDM and deploy the schema element of that without having access to the application.
Brilliant. And that cannot come too soon. I'm about to write a blog post on this. Is one of the barriers to adoption. I feel it's in place that will allow the platform to maintain its interoperability going forward if those schemas become available from the first-party apps. Anyhow, I digress. Tell us about your plans for BizApp Summit in Atlanta.
BizApp, as I mentioned earlier, so we have some pretty good announcement that we're going to make at the Build conference, and then we're going to continue to talk more about that. So I encourage your listeners and the folks to actually, if you can make it, join. There will be a lot of goodness around the new ISV programs, around the V2 or the relaunch of the accelerator program, what that really means, and some of the new things that we're going to put out there for our ISVs. And so please join us.
Awesome. Thanks, Smith. This has been amazing. Let's just do a few quick fire questions before we wrap this up, because this has been very, very insightful. What's the one thing that kind of keeps you awake at night?
As I mentioned earlier, we have some pretty tight deadline internally, some pretty cool projects that we're working on. So obviously that is keeping me awake at night. But from a personal standpoint, it is. I have a 10-year-old, so it's always challenging trying to keep up with a 10-year-old. So,
I bet. So what album is on, or what artists are on your playlists at the moment?
Oh man, I've been on the Michael Bublé kind of marathon lately. I love Michael Bublé, so I love most of the new songs, especially around "It's a Beautiful Day." So I've been listening to that a lot. So
nice. Who do you recommend as a guest for the show in the future that has a particular focus on ISVs within Microsoft?
This is interesting. So as I mentioned earlier, so we are working internally in relaunching many of the ISV programs that we have. So I would strongly recommend Cecilia Flumban to be a guest so she can talk about some of the new and exciting stuff that we're doing for the ISVs.
Excellent. And I've just had an engagement with her, so I know how to get in touch with her. Thank you for that, Smith. It's been great to have you on the show. Before you go, if people want to follow you or connect with you online, are you on any of the social media channels?
Yes, I am. The best way is to engage me on LinkedIn. So I'm trying to be active on LinkedIn. I'm making some pretty good articles on that. As a matter of fact, I'm working on a new one right now for the Accelerator V2. So please feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. That's the best way to reach out to me.
Hey, thanks for listening. Are you interested in the accelerators or have a story you want to share? Get in touch with me at NZ365Guy. If you're part of an ISV or thinking about becoming one and would like to tap into my experience in this space, I'd love to talk to you. Full show notes can be found at nz365guy.com/91. Hey, keep creating.